Welcome to the School of Tyrannus, and we are honored to have as our guest Dr. Tommy Ice. He is the president of the Pre-Trib Study Group, and we are currently attending the annual Pre-Trib Study Group conference that is held in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Dr. Ice, we're delighted to have you with us today.
It's good to be with my good friend Tom McCall. Known each other a lot of years now, and it's great to have a guy who, you know, is a friend like you who believes so much, or believes so much alike.
Amen. You mentioned to me before we came on that you're going to make a trip tomorrow. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I've been invited to go to Portugal to do a prophecy conference, and I don't know much about it because I don't read Portuguese. Most of the stuff is, you know, they got a website and all that, and I'm one of the speakers. And I guess while I'm over there, I'm going to try to visit the Fatima place that occurred in Portugal. And you know, some of the people like Rob Condren, who's from Scotland, who gave a presentation on the European Union, and some others are saying that that could very well be a uniting factor in the one world religion, you know, during the tribulation. And I didn't know this, but apparently Fatima has developed into something that Buddhists go to see, Catholics, of course, Greek Orthodox, Muslims, because it was named after Fatima. It was the favorite daughter of Muhammad, and all of these kinds of things. And you know, the Muslims control the Iberian Peninsula there for many years, and so they seem to think that there's some kind of ecumenical connection with that Fatima thing, and that the new Pope, just this last week, issued some positive statement about Fatima and things. So it'll be interesting to go visit there and see what's going on.
It could be a uniting factor for the apostate world religion after the Lord takes us home. Huh?
That's right. That's what they're saying. I'm not an expert on it, but that's what people are saying who are experts on this.
Well, it's fascinating that Portugal is having a prophecy conference. Who's sponsoring it?
Some Christians over there. I'm not sure exactly who they are, but they've invited me, and I told them I couldn't come because it was during my conference, and they moved it back a day and insisted that I come. I think they've translated a number of our books into Portuguese, so I'm probably one of the prophecy guys that they have in Portuguese, so that's probably why they're inviting me.
Well, since our last interview, Dr. Ice, I believe you have moved from the Texas area to Virginia, to Lynchburg and the Liberty University campus, and that's where the office of the Pre-Trib Research Center is going to be. Can you tell us about your transition and what's going on there?
You know, Tom, when you're in the ministry, you have to sacrifice sometime and go to foreign fields. So I guess we had to leave the great state of Texas, the other Lone Star state like Israel, you know, and move to Virginia, which is a nice place. And we're at Liberty University now, and I'm a professor also, as well as doing the research center there. And they've given us a suite of offices for our library and those kind of things. And eventually we're supposed to move even to a better situation. And I'm teaching classes there. I'm still speaking, traveling and speaking. And also we're starting a Master of Arts in Biblical Studies at the seminary in the next year. And I'll be involved in teaching a lot of the courses, you know, for that. So if anybody's interested in, you know, being involved in that, they need to call the seminary and check into that. I'm hoping to start in the next 6 to 9 months a 1 hour a week radio program where we're going to be articulating, you know, and interacting with other views related to Bible prophecy, dealing with, you know, explaining our view from the Bible and interacting with people that disagree with us.
Will this be a nationwide radio program syndicated, or how will that work?
It could be eventually. Some have said that they would like to put it up on their national radio network, so we'll see what develops.
Well, that should be interesting to hear you on radio, and especially if it becomes nationwide. I think that would be very, very interesting indeed. Well, what are some of the major issues that, especially in Bible prophecy and so forth, that are attracting your attention and your time and interest these days?
Well, I gave a talk here at the conference on what I call the proper approach to, interpreting Bible prophecy if we're futurists, which we are. And what I was pointing out is that prophecy is not being fulfilled today so much, except for the state of Israel. Israel's in the process of fulfilling her return back to the land before the tribulation and unbelief. But what's happening, there are signs of the times. And these signs relate to what we call stage setting, that God is preparing the stage so that once the rapture occurs, that'll be like the curtain going up. Many of these nations and conditions that the world will need to be in and people will be in place so that the tribulation, will commence, after the rapture occurs. And so this whole conference is talking about the different areas where we're seeing God even now at the end of the church age. We're still in the church age, still fulfilling the Great Commission, preaching the gospel, and all of these things. And we just heard Dave Hunt talk about apostasy, which is something that the New Testament talks a lot about and warns especially pastors about. And Dave was going through kind of the 20th anniversary of the seduction of Christianity, talking about a lot of the apostate trends within the church, because that's something we're explicitly commanded to look out for during the last days of the church age. And I think we're definitely in the last days of the church age.
So there are wolves in sheep's clothing and all kinds of heresies and occult movements and cultic. And yes, that was a very interesting talk he gave, and that you gave. And you mentioned Israel. It does seem that if there is one prophecy that's being fulfilled in our very eyes today, it's the dry bones of Ezekiel coming together, and ultimately for the purpose of being saved at the end of the tribulation.
Well, and we see, of course, in Zechariah where it says the whole world's going to be against Israel, and that's talking about during the tribulation. But even, can
you imagine the nations of the earth being against Israel? How can that be?
It's not hard to imagine at all, because one of the buzz things we've been talking about at the conference is Hal Lindsey just got kicked off of TBN for being too pro-Israel and supposedly anti-Palestinian. And here's a guy who, for many years, since 1970, has been known nationally, as a guy who is a prophecy teacher and a pro-Israel. I mean, Hal hasn't changed one iota.
Not a bit.
And yet, why is he being kicked off of a television network like TBN for being too pro-Israel? What's changed? Well, obviously TBN is changing. And either they're being influenced by political correctness, because, Tom, when Israel became a nation back in the 40s, they had a lot of the left-wing humanistic sympathizers for the nation of Israel on, I guess you'd say, humanitarian grounds. Well, here we are, 55, 60 years later, and the left wing has basically shifted, and they're anti-Israel. And they, you look at the anarchists, the hard left, and all these kinds of people, they're all anti-Israel. They had Cindy Crawford, who was protesting at Crawford, and she talks about, starts running Israel down in some of her little comments. If you go to Crawford, Texas, which I've been there, they have this thing called the Peace House there, and it's run by the Palestinians. I don't know if you know that.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, yeah. The quote, Peace House there is Palestinian. They have Palestinian flag in front of it and all this kind of stuff. And the whole world, is just moving more and more against Israel, and we're seeing it now penetrating the church. Used to be within the evangelical church, there were people that didn't like Israel, didn't agree with us, but they didn't say much. They didn't write books, they didn't write many articles, they just kind of let us do our thing and maybe complain about it here or there. But now they're becoming more militant and exerting their anti-Israel views and these kinds of things. I don't know that the general population is less pro-Israel. In America. I don't know that. It's hard to detect. But I do know that there are more leaders who are anti-Israel that are speaking out. And you have the anarchists, for example, who go and protest the IMF. Every time you see the 7 or 9 economic nations or something, they always got the anarchists out there doing all kinds of things. And if you look at the crowd when they pan the TV across there, you'll see many of them carrying a Palestinian flag now. Kind of their secondary issue has now become the Palestinian cause and these kinds of things. And so you see this world sentiment, especially building in Islamic influenced countries. And the fact that the French, for example, have come along and have 10-12% of their population is Muslim, they're producing a swing influence in these European countries where the leaders who need them, to govern, or a certain percentage of them to govern, are afraid to offend them, and they give them free reign. And you're seeing the increase in anti-Semitism like never before in Britain and France and Belgium and Germany and these kinds of things since World War II.
And some of the major denominations are disinvesting in Israel. What does that mean?
Well, not only are they divesting, they're, the United Presbyterian, not the PCA or EPC or OPC, all the alphabet soup Presbyterians, they have about an $8 billion retirement fund. Mm-hmm. And they, kind of like you had with the South Africa situation, they're divesting, they're in the process of divesting from any investments that Israel's involved in their retirement funds, their stocks and things. And not only that, but a lot of people don't realize at the same meeting 2 summers ago where they passed the divestment thing, and by the way, it passed by like 80%, 75-80% vote. Heavy vote. They also voted to declare Christian Zionism to be, they didn't use the word heresy, but it was some word like heresy, that Christian Zionism is a heresy. And you and I are Christian Zionists.
They had their cross airs aimed right at us, it would seem.
That's right. And so they recommended that that they discourage people from being involved in supporting Israel and these kinds of things. And so now that the United Presbyterians have done this, the Episcopalian, they're all falling over each other to do the same type of divestment strategy. So you have the United Church of Christ, the Episcopalians, the United Methodists, all of those liberal left-wing organizations are coming in and trying to follow suit.
It seems like a natural outgrowth of the replacement theology viewpoint. If the church has replaced Israel, what need is there to invest in anything to promote Israel?
Well, that's right. And they tend to argue against, not just argue against Israel, which they do, but they try to say that we somehow neglect the Palestinian church over there. Mm-hmm. And, the church over there is kind of like it is in the United States. There are people who claim to be Christians, like in the mainline denominations, many of whom are not, we wouldn't consider saved because they've never trusted Christ as their Savior, but they're a member of the church. That's probably the way most of the, quote, Palestinian Christians, unquote, are over there. There are some born-again believers over there, and I know a church, for example, in Oklahoma that is a dispensational church. They support Israel, and they also are a sister church with a Palestinian church over there. And so this kind of broad brush idea that if you support Israel, that somehow, you can't also be supportive of the true Christians over there is ridiculous. And
really, it seems that the ones who are persecuting the Palestinian Christians the most are the Palestinian Muslims.
Exactly.
It's not Israel. It's not the American Christians. It's the Muslims that are against the Palestinian Christians, like in Bethlehem.
In fact, I read an academic article that demonstrated that demographically, that when the Muslims took over from Israel in 93, 94. That's when the population went down, and the same thing happened in Lebanon when Arafat and the Palestinians came in the 80s. The decline of the Maronite Christians there in southern Lebanon went down, and the same thing's happening in Iraq, and other places around the world. We could go to Indonesia, Philippines, in Africa and places like that. The Muslims persecute Christians, and that's the real problem.
Well, Dr. Ice, it's been a real privilege for us to discuss these important matters with you and the biblical prophecy that you love so much, and we do too. And we trust the Lord will bless you in your trip to Portugal and your ministry in the Virginia area with the Pre-Trib Research Center.
Well, I hope y'all's ministry continues to prosper at School of Tyrannus.
Thank you very much.